Hi, everybody. It's Peter and Sarah. It's Sarah and Peter. We're here again doing a video together because we thought that the last video we did, there was like a lot of really nice questions in the comments, and we thought that maybe we should just do a follow-up video and kind of talk about some of those. We're both wearing green because we thought that would be cute for St. Patrick's Day, even though that's over. We're like way past the limit for that because we've been horrendously busy. I've been traveling. I spent like 3 weeks in Santa Cruz. I spent like almost a week in Denver. I'm doing a bunch of other traveling and my personal life going on. And then we have been building the new Seattle space, which we are calling Waverly 7. So, yeah, all that is happening. It's all happening very much right now. And we're in meetings for planning Denver and stuff.
Yeah, we've been busy. The good news is that the entire JKL collection from Santa Cruz, California, is now here in a building in Seattle. Well, in 3 different buildings here in Seattle, actually.
At least 3. Yeah.
So that was stressful, but that's done now. We now have months of work.
Certainly months. Let's go with months.
To reassemble the switch room and reassemble the gallery and, and put everything back in place again.
Building a museum is actually really hard. And
it's fun, to be clear, otherwise we wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of hard work, and it can get time-consuming and stressful.
Yeah.
So sorry about the long interval between videos. So let's go on to the questions. Question number 1. Not really a question, more a comment. I really like that coffee mug. I really want that coffee mug. I'm jealous of that coffee mug. So there's good news for everybody who's jealous of this coffee mug, which is that this is now available on our Cotton Bureau site. And there will be a link in the description down below where you can get your own number 5 ESS running wild, 5Es running wild through the city coffee mug.
Yes, they have to roam through the countryside. It's good. Yeah, it's good.
All right. Next question. And this came from several of you. I mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sevens, and a bunch of you others. Looking at that design, it seems like the bottom ring is upside down. Well, guess what?
Who could have imagined?
So, yeah. And I feel kind of stupid because it wasn't until after I saw this comment and looked at some pictures of other museums that have this same reproduction that I realized ours had been put together incorrectly. And if you put the upper ring on that way, here's the one where I replaced the diaphragm in. I have a bit of an excuse. I did consider that on this one, it doesn't go. This one is badly made. Yeah. And so I just assumed that one wouldn't go together that way either.
So this is purely just, it was machined wrong.
It was machined wrong.
So we need to get like A-Bomb 79 or Blondie Hacks to
mill it down or turn it down a little bit on their lathes.
Or at least go find the people who originally machined it and bop them over the head.
Yes.
But yeah, so this doesn't fit. So it was assembled like that.
But
ooh.
Yeah, I had the screws out so that I could show you that. But this one here, yeah, sure enough, this upper ring fits in that way. And then once you do that, these screws here totally make sense now because they tension the diaphragm.
Yeah.
And this diaphragm is nice and tight now.
Extremely, yeah.
And so I haven't tried it out, but maybe at the end of this video, Sarah and I will try putting some special juice into the little cup there and see if we can make that one work too.
Yeah.
What about the battery voltage you used? Would more batteries be better? And the other questions similar to that. So in Bell's notebook, which I'll put on the screen, he doesn't talk about voltage, but he does show the number of cells he used in each configuration. And I think he was probably using something called a Daniels cell. That was a popular kind of battery available to him at that time. and those are like around 1.12 volts each. So that's why I chose 3 volts, because his diagram showed he was using 2 cells. And so I figured, well, I would use 2 cells as well. If you increase the battery voltage, the problem is that the little chemical reaction down there in the cup starts to get really, really enthusiastic and fizzes and bubbles, and it doesn't really help any. So here's another great question. One way to make the resistance change stronger is the shape of the needle tip. And that is a point that I didn't make in the last video, perhaps I should have, but this needle here is very pointy. So as it's going up and down in the cup, right, the surface area is actually increasing because it's like a little cone going up and down in the water. And Bell does actually show that in his diagram as well.
So if the needle was replaced by like a skinny cylinder, which has like a completely flat bottom, like imagine if the needle was replaced by a really tiny version of this coffee cup, and then that was just plopping in and out of the water, that wouldn't be as good as if it were an actual cone-shaped.
Exactly. Okay. A couple of you asked about this little transformer I was using, which is pretty tiny, and am I sure that I didn't saturate the core, which would prevent the input from going through to the output? And the answer is, boy, I really should have thought of that, because I just did a video about the number 1 ESS where I talked about saturable core transformers and how they're used in the 1E. But fortunately, I went back and measured it afterwards, and the 20 milliamps that we were running through here is not enough to saturate this core, although it's kind of close. Like 40 milliamps is enough to start causing the output to diminish. So good point. I should have used a bigger transformer. All right. A bunch of you had ideas for other kinds of diaphragm material that we could have tried here besides goat skin and plastic bag. All great ideas, but I wasn't particularly interested in trying to figure out what is the best diaphragm material that Bell could have used if he lived in 2026.
Yeah. And like, fortunately, you didn't have to go out and kill a goat.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing you can actually buy online, is goat skin drum covers.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now, this was kind of a fun question, and I thought Sarah might have some thoughts. What do you think Watson was thinking when he was constructing these originally? Was he just like, okay, it only needs to work for a week, so I'm going to bang it together quickly? Or was he actually like trying to do a really nice job?
So that's actually a really interesting question, and it's hard to answer that without really knowing what kind of guy Watson was, right? Because like on one hand, you have like those of you who have worked in like engineering labs, who are just making like proof of concept things for a product, right? You're not worried about the appearance of the product. You're not worried about like how tiny you can make it or how shiny you can make it. You're just worried about like, does this thing work? And then we can figure out how to make it look nice later. At least that's the modern way of doing things, right? Like we have the engineers who design the particulars of the functionality of the product, and then we have like the UI, UX folks who think about like how the humans are going to use this thing. And I don't know that that was really well established back in like 1880 whatever, 1870 whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's hard to say. You know, we have his biography, his autobiography, but of course, you know, he's like praising himself in that. So he would not have said in that, oh, I whipped it together as cheaply as I could. The only, and the sketches that we have, you know, they're very rough sketches, so it doesn't really tell you, you know, how nicely made the things were. The only thing that we have that's kind of close to that is the Smithsonian does have a version of this that Watson made for the Centennial Exhibition in 1776. But then again, you know, he knew he was making it for display, so he might have tried to do a nicer job.
I don't know if he took the time to do these nice beveled router jig things and all of the wood bases or not, because what if he's just going to throw that away tomorrow?
Right. About Bell allegedly spilling acid on his pants, right? And so it's like, given the decorum and formality of the Victorians, I could picture Watson keeping the spilled acid story a secret until Bell passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can imagine that. On the other hand, I think Bell would have probably said something about it in his letter to his family and to his dad, and he didn't either. So,
How many crazy tech tycoons do we know that make up fanciful stories about how they came up with some idea or how they came up with something, right?
yeah, that's a good point. It's also brings up a really fun topic that I have started to learn more about, and Sarah too. And I'm no professional historian, right? I've got no degree in history, but when you're trying to understand what really happened, the thing that's gold is what's called a primary source, right? So, like the thing, the notebook or the letter or the thing that the person wrote right then at that time before they had a chance to invent a bigger story around it.
Yeah.
And so we have some of that, and those are really useful and interesting. Those are some of the notebooks I put in the video. And then we've also got the later interpreters, and then the people who've read those notebooks and put their own spin on it. And so much has been written about Bell, and some of it's trustworthy, some of it's not.
Right.
Here's another bit of a philosophical question. So someone says, I think it's hard to call audio over a dedicated direct link a phone call. It's clearly phone transmission, but it lacks the aspect of a call to connect any other point on request.
Yeah, that is like that is getting at like the philosophy of what is a phone call. I mean, that's directly asking that question, right? And this is something I talk about on my tours, and it's important to note that Bell and Watson did not at all investigate the possibilities of telephone switching. That is the ability for more than one person to call more than one person. So their direct involvement with the invention of the telephone ended at the invention of the telephone. And then from there were sort of two or three diverging paths on the tree. Okay, so one of those paths was how can we make the telephone instrument better? And so we had all sorts of people, notably Edison was one of them, who invented better transmitters and better receivers, and then better electricals inside the telephone itself. And then we had another group of people who were kind of figuring out how to make the telephone more useful by switching calls. And this was a very, very, very like early attempt at this art. And they, without going into the whole history of telephone switching, they started off with what they already knew from telegraph switching, which some of that could be directly transferred to the telephone art, and some of it couldn't because it just telegraph was a different animal with different requirements. So it took several years, both before the telephone instrument itself and the art of switching were sufficiently advanced to make the use of it practical for regular people to even consider.
Bell had at least the vision of that very early on. He didn't work on it personally, but he did write a letter, which I'll try to find and put on the screen, to his dad, where he said, I can envision a time where everybody in the country has a telephone in their house.
Right. He did totally say that. I remember that. Yeah. So I guess it would be that like he saw what the potential of the telephone could be, but he didn't do any active like theoretical or engineering work to make that a thing.
So, and this is a great segue to the next question, which is, what about the claims of Johann Philipp Reis, the German, and what about the claims of Antonio Meucci, the Italian, who clearly at least had the idea for a telephone well before Bell or Elijah Gray had the idea, right? And so shouldn't they be credited as the actual inventors of the telephone? And this is another fun philosophical question to me. So should Steve Jobs and Apple get credit as the inventor of the smartphone? Well, I would argue there was absolutely no feature in the iPhone 1 that you can't find some earlier example of somewhere, right? There were phones that did email.
Yeah.
There were phones that let you surf the web. There were phones that sent text messages.
There were devices where you could, I don't know if you could use your finger, but there were like Newtons and PDAs.
There were devices that used a little stylus.
Yeah.
Right. There were phones with cameras. So why does everybody think that Jobs should get credit or that Apple should get credit? And then the answer is because they were the first ones to put it all together into a package that was so compelling that finally absolutely everybody could see, oh, I see why that's so great. I want one, right? And you see that throughout history. It's not necessarily the person who has the idea who ultimately gets credit for it. It's the person who figured out how to make it compelling enough and accessible enough that everybody suddenly realized why it was a good thing and wanted one.
Right.
And that was Bell for sure. I don't think you can undervalue the importance of doing that last step, of making the thing affordable and accessible to everyone.
Yeah, right. Agreed.
Okay. What about the Seth Shulman book? Hand me that book. So several of you asked about this. This book here, The Telephone Gamut, argues that Bell totally stole the idea from Elijah Gray. And my opinion, it's my opinion, but I think that Shulman misreads the chronology of what happened and completely misunderstands the diagram. So here's the diagram from Elijah Gray's caveat. And we talked about patent caveats like 3 videos ago, right? And then here's the diagram from Bell's notebook. And they both show a human head talking into some kind of microphone-like thing, right? Now, if your argument is, okay, clearly Bell understood from this that a human could talk into a microphone and he didn't know that before. Yeah. But...
Right. Okay, so what you're saying is this is one of those things where some modern person looks back and says, oh, look, this guy came up with the idea of talking into a thing.
Right.
And then this guy clearly copied the idea of talking into a thing. But like that wasn't the hard part. Right. That wasn't the talking into some kind of speech capture device like a microphone.
Yeah.
That was the obvious part.
And I think what Shulman misses here is that the details of the thing that you're talking into, that actually counts for a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like exactly what kind of liquid is in your liquid transmitter and the shape and depth of the little rod that's going up and down in it, that matters to whether the device works or not. And what Gray was using was plain water and a deeply inserted rod, and other people have since tried to reproduce that and it doesn't work, right? Bell did not steal the idea of using dilute sulfuric acid and a pointy needle. He came up with that himself.
Yeah.
As far as we can tell. You know, there's this old saying, of course, that success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. When the telephone really took off, all these people showed up and said, oh, that was my idea. Oh, that was my idea. And, you know, right. Because all of a sudden they saw why it was really important. So I think Shulman is relying a little bit too much on those other people who came later and said, oh, no, I was there first, but I just didn't bother to tell anybody about it. Right. It doesn't count if you don't get anybody to understand why it's important. There were a couple of other kinds of microphones. I showed a few different kinds of microphones in the video. Yes, there are other kinds of microphones. Sorry, I didn't include your favorite type, but you know, I was trying to make a video that wasn't too terribly long. That leads to this other question about Edison's microphone, the carbon transmitter. So as I think we said, this, not a good microphone at all. What actually worked for the first time is basically this thing here. So you can connect 2 of these back to back like this. This is technically this is a receiver, but it also works as a transmitter. And you can just wire 2 of these together back to back and shout into one of them, and you can totally hear it in the other one with no batteries at all.
So I learned this when I was a kid, and I was playing around with my family's big stereo, and I said, what would happen if I stuck my headphones in the microphone jack? And then I realized that I could scream into the headphones and it would record onto the tape. And this sort of reminds me of that.
Yeah. And for those of you who live in a place that has ferries, like we do here in Seattle, lots of them, next time you're on the ferry, look around for the thing which will be labeled sound-powered telephone. They have them everywhere, typically on boats. And the idea is that's a telephone system that needs no electricity at all, and therefore will keep on working even if the generator fails and the battery fails. And it's this same idea, right? You're basically using a transmitter to generate a tiny electric current, which then comes out on the other one as sound again.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what Bell's first commercial telephone actually used. It's called the coffin phone. I would desperately love to get a real one for the museum sometime, but when they come up for auction, it's like tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
They're very scarce. Maybe someday some really nice collector will have mercy on us and donate their coffin phone.
Which we'll have to keep behind glass.
Which we'll have to keep behind,
with like lasers.
Yeah. We have a reproduction one, but it's actually kind of a crummy reproduction.
Yeah.
It's not super nice. But then what really made the telephone successful was called the carbon transmitter. And as Sarah mentioned earlier, that was Thomas Edison who invented the first carbon transmitter. And there's another whole chapter of history there where the Bell system didn't want to pay royalties on Edison's patent. And this other gentleman named Blake also came up with a carbon transmitter that was a little bit different. And so they licensed the Blake transmitter. Somebody patents something, one of the first questions you ask is, well, can I engineer around that patent?
See early hook switches.
Right.
AT&T had patented the like hang the thing up on the hook switch like that for this type of receiver. And all of the early, while that patent was in effect, which was a few years, all of the other competitors to them had to come up with weirdly different hook switch designs, none of which actually, in my opinion, worked as well as just putting the receiver back on the hook, which seems very obvious. And it was all just to get around patents, which we of course still see today.
A couple of you said what you heard either Sarah or me say rather than what we actually said. So one person heard live on Eggs Benedict. And one person heard, this is a Formica table. So
what's the name of that audio illusion or that effect where humans hear what they think they hear, not right. What's actually being...
Yeah, we talked about that in
the last video.
If you know what you're expecting to hear, then that's what you'll hear. And if you don't, then it can be a lot harder. Another question was, what USB audio device did I use to capture the microphone input? And the answer is the absolute cheapest little USB dongle sound card that I could get, because I wasn't willing to risk damaging an expensive sound card.
Yeah.
So for these purposes, the fidelity of this thing, I'm sure, was just fine. Right?
Yeah.
No audio quality problems were caused by this. I threw in a quick drawing from a patent about pulse code modulation because Sarah had mentioned how PCM was invented at Bell Labs, and somebody noticed that the name of the inventor was C.E. Shannon.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and then is this the same Claude Shannon who invented basically everything? Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
That one.
Yeah. He also did a little robotic mouse that solves mazes as well.
Basically the father of information theory, right?
Yeah. But I saw a documentary on Claude Shannon, which made me like him even more, because some people who knew him argue that he invented information theory and then went like, okay, did that, on to the next thing, right? And like in his later life, he like really enjoyed juggling. Like, okay. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, okay. He's one of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
He's just like, and you know, he's just like, yeah, that was cool.
Another G-type handset fan just also wanted to say how good they thought the G-Type handset was. That was the
Good
best
handset.
one ever.
It's a good handset, folks.
Yeah.
One of the best, actually.
Yeah.
I'm also a fan of the G-Type handset.
Yeah. So we agree with you on that. Barefoot Ray says, "Hi, Sarah and Peter. It's Ray, the blind guy. Ray, if you're one of the blind people who've come to visit this museum, I apologize that I don't remember you by name. I will take this opportunity to say this is a great museum for blind people. If you've got blind friends, they would love this place. Just email in advance to let us know that they're coming so that we have an appropriately trained docent available for them." Barefoot Ray says, "Have you heard the recordings of the voice of Alexander Graham Bell?" And the answer is yes. I'm only familiar with one, which he made at Volta Labs, which was his next enterprise after the phone company. And it's on the Smithsonian Institution's website, and it's also on YouTube. The interesting thing to me is it sounds like he's speaking with an American accent and not a Scottish accent. Maybe he changed his pronunciation just for the recording.
Maybe.
I don't quite know. Yes, thanks for pointing that out, Ray. I'm curious if you've checked with the Alexander Graham Bell Museum in Baddeck, Nova Scotia. I know that it's there. All of the authors of books about Bell have to make a trek there. I would love to make a trek there sometime to see what they have, but I haven't done it yet. Definitely it would be an interesting thing to do. And now we've got a couple of meta ones here.
Wait, surprise Sarah with a thing video could be an interesting format. Yeah, this would be interesting because the thing is like the amount of like executive function I need to summon up to like actually record the video is really, really difficult. But if you like corner me with something that I can talk about for 5 minutes, that's just like, okay, let me just.
Yeah. Sarah's right now working on a video about the JKL Museum and the move and bringing it here and setting it up again. And that's going to be a highly produced, highly edited video, which is a huge amount of effort.
I don't know about highly edited, but it's going to be more produced
You're clearly having to put a lot more effort into that.
Yeah.
Whereas I promised Sarah this one here, she just had to show up and answer questions. And
I showed up.
so yeah, I think that would be fun. Put that in the comments if you want. Surprise Sarah with a thing videos. I think that'd be fun. Could we do a video about how billing was done?
Oh my God. Yes, I need to do that. So let me just talk about that for a second, because by the way, billing is one of Peter's favorite things to talk about. He does a great job at it. But billing is like one of those concepts where as soon as you start to think about it, the rabbit hole just goes on into infinity. So the challenge with doing a video about billing is like, how do I do a video about billing that doesn't turn into a 10-part
series, right?
Like PBS special on billing, because it is actually really interesting, and I think a lot of you folks would find it interesting as well. So thanks everybody for all of your questions and comments. They were all great. We do have one of the better comment sections on YouTube because a lot of them or a lot of the comments that y'all leave are like really focal points for starting like an interesting discussion about stuff we're talking about. So we're going to go back to being real busy. I will try to get some videos out to y'all when I'm not like actively on the road traveling. But it's nice to spend a little while with you. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.